Hey everyone, Scott and Matty here again.
Hi.
And welcome to Queer as Pop, the podcast where we have fun discussing all things LGBT and how they intersect with pop culture, politics, and top headlines. So, everyone, we have such a fundamentally special guest with us today. She's a legend with a career that has spanned decades in both theater, film, and television. She has made appearances in iconic movies and TV like Tu Wong Fu, Trick, Girls Will Be Girls, and Will and Grace. She's done comedy shows literally across the globe and has entertained millions throughout her career, both on live and platforms like YouTube and Instagram. She's currently the star and producer of Casa Coco, where she entertains her Cocoa Puffs with comedy and interviews that include amazing talent like Bianca Del Rio, Zachary Quinto, Sean Hayes, and Allison Janney. And with the self description of the hostess with that something extra, we have the honor and privilege of introducing the most wonderful Ms. Coco Peru today. Hi, Coco. Welcome to
Hi,
Queer as Pop.
Scott.
How are
That's
you
one of the
doing?
loveliest intros I've ever had.
Oh, my word. Well, you
Fundamental.
deserve
You
it.
said I was fundamental. I love that.
You were.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you are fundamental to queer culture. So come on now.
Yes. And hello, Matthias, as well.
Hello,
I hear you there.
welcome.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you here. It's amazing, and we're gonna have a really good time. So I feel like it would be appropriate for us to start off with asking you, how are you doing in this crazy world we're living in right now and the situation with COVID-19?
I really can't complain as much as I love complaining. I, I, I have a roof over my head. My fans have kept me making a living, and my husband has a job, so I have his insurance, thank God. So I can't complain. But I just, like everyone else, it still feels like a roller coaster ride of, some days are good, some days not so good. When I catch myself feeling not so good, I remember to, just as corny as it sounds, I really do count my blessings. I look around for all the little things I can be grateful for.
Yeah, I think that's a very good perspective to have in this situation. And so you don't really fall under any kind of deep depression and struggle in that sense as well. Because something that's absolutely kept me going was listening to your Thoughts While in Solitude series on YouTube. And those stories were really inspiring and actually very personal. So I would love for you to talk to us about a little bit on how was that process for you to actually engage in conversation with your fans in that sense.
I was so blown away when the lockdown first happened at how many drag queens just kind of bounced back and were doing shows. And I'm not one of those people that just can bounce back. I'm more of I have to analyze everything. Even my shows that are written. So many people that I've worked with in the past are surprised that when they actually are on the crew for one of my shows and they have a script, they go, "You have a script?" And then at the end of the show, they're just amazed at how word for word my shows are. So everything's thought out and planned. So I couldn't just bounce right back and do a show, but I did think I wanted to connect with people. And I thought, even if it's just one person that listens to me and they value something that I say, then it's worth it. And I had set up a challenge for myself also, at being such a control freak and always so hard on myself that things need to be perfect. And like, really, when does anything ever go perfect? So I'm constantly beating myself up no matter what I do. So I set up a challenge for myself that I was going to just speak from my heart. It wasn't about me being in drag. It was about the words being spoken. So I didn't feel the need to even have to dress up in drag. I just wanted it to be about my thoughts. And I was going to press record, film it once, and then send it out into the universe. There were no double takes, no it having to be perfect. And it was just going to be what it was going to be. And so that was a challenge for me. But, and I guess that's kind of what kept it interesting as well. But then I couldn't believe the response I got from people, mostly people saying they listened to it right before they went to bed. It was like a good night story. And I thought, how interesting that people
I
are
love
so vulnerable right now that they need to feel comforted almost in a way they were comforted as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly how I did it. I listened to you every time I went to bed. It was
the last voice I would want to hear.
Yeah.
It's my Bronx accent, but
that's what Scandinavian 32-year-old bisexual men do. They listen to your voice, Coco, before they go to bed.
Oh, Matthias, you're getting me excited. Careful.
Yeah.
So after, you start this series and you get this kind of really incredible response, what lessons do you take back from it for yourself that kind of has shaped a little bit of how you think about how you want to continue creating content in this COVID world that we currently live in?
Well, when I started doing the Casa Coco show, where I am in drag and it is live, I have tremendous fears, as I said, because I just always want everything to be perfect. And so doing those Casa Coco, the Coco Thoughts While in Solitude really prepared me sort of mentally and even emotionally on some level that what people really cared about wasn't that things looked slick and perfect. What they really cared about was the spoken word, a human connection. And that even when I go on stage in my live shows, I'm always so afraid of screwing up a line or forgetting a line. And, but when I do in the moment, it kind of makes me more human, and the audiences love when I screw up, which is very rare, may I say, but it does happen. But so I guess that really has been the most valuable lesson for me, is that it's okay to screw up, not be perfect, and that my fans still value my even just taking a chance and putting myself out there and just doing the best I can do given the circumstance. And that's been a really wonderful lesson for me. And I feel a deeper connection to my fans more than ever. And I have always felt a great connection with my fans, but I think it's even deeper now. Yeah.
So do you think then, like, with platforms like YouTube and, how you're hosting as a video on demand service, even your Casa Coco series, do you think they've been fundamentally helpful for you to create that type of engagement you've been looking for, or that you maybe didn't necessarily know you missed until you all of a sudden had it and you're like, wow, this is a really powerful tool?
That's the second time you used the word fundamental. I just wanted to point that out, Scott.
I'm now banned from using that word. I will excise it from my vernacular.
I just said it. I love the word. I regret doing that to a German neighbor of ours when we're in Spain. We have German neighbors, and the one boy always says, "Unbelievable! It's unbelievable!" And I made the mistake of telling him how cute I thought that was. So now he doesn't say it anymore in front of us. So I'm sorry, Scott, but
don't apologize.
I think as a performer, if you want to have a career that reaches new people, or just be in the arts, you have to evolve constantly. And so YouTube was part of that evolution. I never thought that I would make videos, and I kind of did it as a joke at first for my fans. And then it turned out that those videos transcended my core base of fans, and people just started watching me that knew nothing of my one-person shows. And for a few years, I felt a little pang of regret every time someone would say, "Oh, Coco, we love you so much." And I'd say, "Well, how do you know me? What show did you see?" And they were like, "Oh, no, just from your videos." And I'm always like, oh, those are just meant to be silly. Like my shows are what I'm really passionate about. But I've learned to accept that for some reason, those silly videos of me walking around commenting and bitching about everything resonates with people. And what really fascinates me is how much it resonates with young teenage girls. And I think part of that is that girls have a lot of pressure to look and behave a certain way in the world. And they find it empowering to watch someone who doesn't fit into the world go out into the world and create a space that I clearly, in my mind, belong wherever I am. So, and I don't care what other people think of me. That doesn't. Uh, it's about me owning my space in the world, and so I think young people find that inspiring.
Yeah. Speaking of your fans and how they perceive you and the way they actually find out about you, for someone like me who lives in Sweden, it's basically impossible to actually be able to participate in one of your shows. So the way I actually found out about you was years ago. I know you're famous for your performance in the movie Trick, but my first encounter with you was actually in the movie Girls Will Be Girls, which was an absolute ride. I love that movie so much, and you and Jeffrey Robertson and Jack Plotnick had such an amazing chemistry. Was there ever any plans for a sequel? Because I know you guys did extend the storyline through YouTube at one point back in the day.
Yes, we actually filmed a sequel, and it still was supposed to come out in 2012, and
Yeah.
Obviously that never happened. And the Richard Day, who wrote and directed the first one, did the second one as well. And as far as I know, he's still working on it because a lot of it was filmed in green screen.
Yeah.
And every time he gets something looking good, there were a lot of problems as well that he encountered along the way of trying to put this together. One of them was the computer he had everything on crashed or something, and he had to
Oh
send it
God.
off. Yeah, so it was like a nightmare. But also, it's such a slow process for him that he keeps discovering, like, things keep changing the way you can do things. So he keeps trying to make it look better every time there's a new sort of program or something. I don't understand any of that, but we did film it, and hopefully someday I'll still be alive to see it.
Yeah. I mean, we'd love to see it, because for me that was uh, like like revolution to just see your performance like that and just instantly falling in love with you as a character and the way you have this aura of a somewhat bitter but realistic housewife. Cracks me up as a bitter Scandinavian, so I absolutely love that essence in you.
I can tell you that I was very insecure on the set of that movie for the first week, because I'm, of course, with my live shows, the center of attention and used to being I'm getting the laughs because I'm the only one on stage. I had also filmed a movie called Trick, and that I had gotten a lot of laughs. So when I went onto the set of Girls Will Be Girls, um, I could tell that my part wasn't as funny as the other two. And I got incredibly insecure because every time they finished filming a Varlo or Evie scene, the crew would bust out laughing, or they'd be trying not to laugh during the filming. And my scenes were like crickets. And I just thought, I'm
Oh my God.
terrible. I'm terrible in this movie. And so I spoke to a friend of mine, and he said, don't worry about that. You play the role as if it's a serious role. Don't play it for laughs. Play it as if it's a real person. And as soon as I went in and did that, I sort of set myself free, and I thought, I'm going to be the anchor of this film, what keeps it based in some sort of reality, because everyone's so over the top, that I thought, I'll be the sort of one that's real. And and I when I saw the movie finally, I thought, oh, I I shine in my own way as the other two shined. And the other thing that was great about the three of us was that we all liked each other and we all respected each other so much before even coming into this that we never tried to steal a scene from another like we were all just supporting each other because we knew
Yeah.
I love
as
that.
if a trio we worked really well together, it would just make all three of us look even better. So no one ever tried to outdo the other one ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really amazing.
Yeah. So I appreciate your feedback on it because that is what we were striving for.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first experience with you was when I saw Trick. I remember it so vividly because I snuck the VHS cassettes because I was still living at home with my parents. They did not yet know I was queer, and so I snuck the VHS cassette into my house from the Blockbuster and and was able to watch it, while everyone else had gone to sleep, and it was just such an incredible movie to be able to watch, and being introduced to you was such a treat that way. And I just got so excited when I saw the news that that pieces of the cast were reuniting to tell another part of the story with Trick 2. And from what I gather, you are also involved in that project. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Of course, with COVID, all of that's been put on hold. So, but the script is written. I have a bigger part in the second one, and that was a very exciting. The first one was a very exciting experience for me, and I wasn't even supposed to be in the first one, and I sort of. It's
Your monologue
amazing.
was beautiful.
And they let me rewrite it. So because that line is big, it's beautiful, and you're going to love it is something someone actually said to me once, and I thought, that's such a great line. I have to. Some guy, some like gorgeous Puerto Rican boy was trying to pick me up in New York City, and I should have went for it, but I didn't because I had just started dating Raphael, and then anyway, he had looked down at his crotch, and he had this enormous erection, and said, "It's big, it's beautiful, and you're gonna love it." And I pulled myself up the stairs away from him, and I thought, "My God, that's a great line. I'm gonna have to use it." And so, Trick was where I used it, and then it just tickled me to see the big bus posters and the big. What do you call those things that they put up on the side of highways? Those huge billboards. A billboard on Santa Monica Boulevard with my picture, and it said, "It's big, it's beautiful, and you're going to love it." And I thought, this is amazing. And I also, Scott, I had that experience of being a young teenager, or maybe I was already just going into college. I don't know, but I had gone to the video store and rented My Beautiful Laundrette, which was a gay film, and it was my first gay movie, and I was so titillated and shaking. But I do remember thinking someday I want to be in a gay movie. And so when I saw Trick for the first time, I started crying when it was over and it was with an audience, it was at Sundance, and I realized that, oh my God, that dream I had about being in a gay movie, I did it. This is my gay movie. I'm in a gay movie. So, and
That's
I loved,
huge.
I wanted to be in a gay movie so that young people would have basically the experience that you had, which is the experience that I had. I knew how much gay content, especially back then, was valuable. There just were no images of us in television or in film. And I remember being young and gay and going to bookstores to sort of discover my history, and going to a gay restaurant for the first time that was gay owned. And my boyfriend and I held hands in public in a restaurant. It was like, we couldn't believe it. And
It's a rush. It's a
yes,
rush.
and nowadays it seems silly with RuPaul's Drag Race and all these gay shows and gay characters, and it's everywhere. But back then it wasn't, and it was such an important moment in my life, and so to to have done Trick, and to have it be at that time, it was kind of revolutionary because there were no really gay films that were just about two gay guys who were already out and happy about it and looking for a place to have sex. Back then it was, these very heavy movies like My Beautiful Laundrette about coming out and, AIDS, or the gay character committing suicide. So this was just a fun movie.
It was a fun movie, and it was just it left such an impression on me because, to your point, you didn't see that representation in most media, and it just helped you feel a little bit seen, that there were other people out there who were like you, who had similar experiences as you, and it just helped you feel like you could just take a little breath of air and know that someday you would meet other people like you, if at that moment you didn't maybe have it yet.
And for me, it's funny you bring it up, because I remember thinking that I loved that Gabriel, the gay protagonist, had a straight roommate guy, and they were both arguing who was going to be able to have like their sex that night in the apartment. And like the character of Rich, who's the straight roommate, isn't bothered by the gay stuff. He's bothered by no, he needs the apartment that night. So to me, that it was amazing, that I didn't know straight men got along with gay people at that point, So it was just in hindsight. Well, I mean, in looking at it now, it seems maybe a bit naive, but back then it was groundbreaking. I mean, I shouldn't say groundbreaking because that's such a big word, but I think for a lot of young gay kids, it was. They had never seen two gay men who were comfortable with themselves and feeling sexual and looking for a place to have sex.
Yeah. And just that interaction with having someone who's straight and actually not being bothered by your sexuality, I think that was a big thing that meant a lot to gay people, to have that visible on screen, that there are actually people, or there might actually be people out there who don't have any issues with it.
Right.
And keeping that communication natural between each other.
And now that I've been doing drag for so many years, and with the dawn of internet and being able to communicate with people, I've learned even myself just how human sexuality is so vast and fluid, and people fall into it in all sorts of ways. And I sort of discovered that later in my life. I would have men try to pick me up as Coco, and I didn't quite understand what that was all about. And and now I sort of think, oh Jesus, I wish I could go back and live that part of my life over again. But I certainly, I think that I hope that the direction we're moving in, as far as human sexuality, is more inclusive, where people can truly feel fluid about it and not be ashamed and not feel pigeonholed into playing certain roles. And that is what drag did for me. But I'm amazed to see so many people who have opened up to me about their sexuality. It's amazing.
Yeah, I have a background in psychology, and that's definitely something that's been very up in front on how we perceive and discuss sexuality. That it resembles more of a spectrum in our conscience than just something that is just black and white.
Yeah,
truly.
One of my favorite stories in one of my shows is sort of goes into that, and a little bit, but it starts off kind of like a naughty story, and then it ends up where the whole audience is just like touched and really moved by this naughty story, which is about a straight man who wasn't able to express to his wife some of his fantasies that involved a leather fetish. but he could with me,
Yeah.
and nothing happened between us. But it was just, it's just a very sweet story. And I just said to my husband today, thank God we're gay. And part of this LGBT community. I said, I hate that argument when people say, do you think I would choose this as a lifestyle? After everything I've been through. And I'm thinking, yes, even after everything I went through, I would still choose this.
Right, exactly. And I think, I really, what touched me right with what you're talking about right there is, how as queer folk, we are immediately thrust into a moment where we have to evaluate what we want that sits outside of some heteronormative ideal of how sex is supposed to happen. And so it makes us more receptive to conversations and mindsets about sex that, really a lot of people in the world don't think about. And, I think that one of the wonderful things about both what you do and just queer media in general, and the more it gets out there, is we kind of normalize the conversation of what is sexuality, what is something that I can be interested in, how do I talk about it? And I think that just the more you talk about it, the easier it is for people to hear it and then also feel comfortable talking about it themselves.
Absolutely. And I've always found that early on, when in conversations with other people, I have found that when you come out, often the people you work with who might have what I would call a normal life, suddenly start telling you their not so normal secrets because they feel safe with you, and you become like this therapist. So I have found that my shows have been, what people tell me, like a group therapy, because I am talking about all of these things, and I also find a way to do it in a humorous or sometimes touching way where I'm very honest. My mother often says, why do you have to tell all those secrets on stage? I said, because when I do, you hear the laughter. It's because everybody in there might not have the same story as me, but they have their own version of that story. And so I'm not a very secretive person.
Yeah.
But that open and honesty, I think, is so magnetic. And I think that a lot of people really do appreciate that because, it can be a little hard opening up for the first time, and having someone else bring up these topics and talk about them is such a liberating thing when you can just be a participant of that, then invite you to then become part of the discussion.
Right. And when I first came out to my parents, my mother, sort of screamed one day. She said, "Oh my God, why do you always have to talk about it?" And I said, because for years I didn't want to talk about it, and it's all that everybody else talked about. So now that I can finally talk about it, oh, she's going to talk about it. So I think once you liberate yourself from that closet and then you take it to the extreme, like I did, there's just no turning back. And you want everybody to feel that kind of liberation. And that was always one of my goals, was that I didn't want young gay kids to have to go through what I went through.
Yeah, yeah. It truly is a sense of liberation once you get out of the closet. That unrivals a lot of scenarios in your life. I remember myself coming out as bisexual, and it was surprising to a lot of people, but I felt so liberated. I didn't have to explain why or anything. It was just natural to me, and it was something that I just had to do. And people were probably annoyed with the fact that I talked about it a lot as well, and I had to, because the concept of being bisexual is something that can still be quite hard for some people to understand.
It's still hard for people, and it's still hard for people, and this is what blows my mind, in our very own community.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think that, with how much more conversation there is, how much more media there is, and how much more visibility it has, that it becomes still so difficult. But, I think, Matty, I think you have a very interesting perspective in terms of, I think with Coco and I both living in the United States, how it sort of reflects on us when we try to come out or talk about this, and how maybe
Yeah.
some of your personal experiences might be a little bit different in Sweden.
Yeah, I mean, there's different
Oh, yeah.
they're different in the regard of that. Like, there is no pressure when it comes to the religious, cultural influences that occupy a lot of the American society. That pressure doesn't really exist in the same sense, and we don't make such a big deal about sexuality in general. But saying that, there's also very little engagement from people in general in the public to find ways to make these issues, how to progress these issues. Like, for instance, trans issues are basically just on hold here. And that, I feel that even if it's like a liberal society that I exist in that has certain benefits compared to the States, it's somewhat even too comfortable for people, so we don't really do anything about it either. We don't really speak about it. It gets silenced because it's comfortable.
That's interesting, Matthias, because I think my husband's from Spain, and I would say one of the big differences I've noticed between that culture and being American is that they're very, very open. I
Yeah.
don't, I feel totally accepted. And even with like the Catholic Church having had such a big influence on Spain, I think after those people living under a dictatorship for so many years, when they finally were out from under that, there was this explosion of, Almodovar and this creativity and
Absolutely.
this movement. So that still is there. But what I noticed in Spain is that I sometimes ask questions and I come across as being very forward
Yeah.
and maybe a little too prying, whereas they're very private and to just I've noticed that where it's sort of very American to just uh, be probing and ask questions and be a little nosy, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in Spain, it's just like, whoa, that's a little too nosy. Like, I don't know you.
Yeah, yeah. I think I explained to Scott earlier when we got to know each other that if you go up to someone and give a casual smile, they will either think you're a drunk or a psychopath or
Right.
weird. So
We had
I
two friends
totally
visit.
understand that.
Yeah, we had two friends visit from Spain, and they were astonished at how Americans talk to each other in the stores. Me especially. Everywhere I went, I was starting up a conversation. They could not get over that. So it's
Yeah.
funny. It's just different cultures, but I can see how
Yeah.
that might affect actual talking about sex. You might be open about sexuality, but might not be able to just freely talk about it. In
Exactly.
fact, my husband, when I first met my future sister-in-law, she's from Madrid. My husband was warning me, just saying, "Listen, she's a Madrilena. They're very forward and whatnot." And so our first meal together, she just like looked at me and was like, "So how do you know you're gay?" And da 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 da. Well, of course, I came right back at her, and we had like the best conversation. And after I left, I said to Raphael, I said, "She's amazing. Like, what were you worried about?" Because I'm from. He was like, "I
I
guess
love
that's the
that.
New Yorker in you. Is like." It's like being someone from Madrid. They're just a little bit more direct. But where Raphael's from, it's the complete opposite. It's just like
Yeah.
everybody's so
Interesting.
private. Yeah.
So interesting.
Oh, well, I hope we haven't bored the listeners talking
No.
about
Oh
our.
gosh, now are you kidding me?
This-
I think something that you've touched on a few times, and I definitely want to hear a little bit more from your perspective, Coco. So you talk about your live shows. Before you were maybe doing a lot of more YouTube videos, theater, and film. So like, how did you sort of feel? Or what was the process where you were like, I'm going to become a performer. I really have something I want to say. And this is going to be the medium that I know I get to express myself in what feels authentic and where I want to go.
I was. I graduated college. I'd gone to school for theater, so I always knew I wanted to be in theater. And because we grew up near Manhattan. I got to go to Broadway shows as a kid and Radio City music halls. It was all, I loved all that glitz and drama. But when I went to theater school, I was shamed because I was told to butch up and that I was never going to make it and to lose my Bronx accent. And in a way, they were correct because when I went out into the real world, nobody would hire me because I was too gay and I had this, could never quite lose the Bronx accent. So, but at the same time, AIDS was destroying the gay community in New York, and I was coming out at that sexual, I was sexually finally able to be myself at the same time where sex was so horribly scary. And so I wanted to become an activist. At the same time I wanted to become an activist, I had seen Charles Busch in a play in New York City where he had written it and he played the female lead. And his sidekick was Julie Halston, who had the thickest New York accent. And they were getting these huge laughs and being celebrated. And then the third part of that is there's four parts. And I went to Peru at the time with my first ever boyfriend who was Peruvian. And I met a drag queen named Coco, we were in this bar that was very secretive, like you had to knock on the door to get in. But this drag queen, Coco, who was performing that night, was celebrated in the straight world and on television and performing and was a talking head on talk shows. I thought, how is that possible that here I am in a gay bar where you have to secretly knock to get in? And this drag performer who's like the ultimate queer, thing is celebrated. So that left a big influence on me because I realized there's something about just not only coming out, but then taking everything you've taught to hate about yourself and celebrating it that people are drawn to. They respect the courage. And then I read a book about two-spirited people, Native American, in the Native American culture. And that, for the first time, I felt like, oh my God, I have a history. I am reading what I felt as a child, that I wasn't a boy or a girl. I was always kind of both. And that cemented it for me, wanting to be an activist / entertainer, wanting to be like Charles Busch and write my own shows and create my life, celebrate my New York accent, be a two-spirited person, and have the courage that this queen had in Peru. It just came together. And I said, I'm a drag queen one day. And as soon as I said that, it was like this bolt of lightning hit me and my life became clear. I saw it.
Yeah.
And there was nothing, all my fears just kind of were still there, but they drifted off into my peripheral vision. And my goal was so strong. And I called a club, I booked a show, and I gave myself 3 months to write my first show and to sort of create. I'd never done drag before. So I started shopping for costumes and shoes and hair and didn't know how to do makeup. But I just knew that this was my purpose in life.
Yeah.
As outrageous as it seemed. And people back then were like, you're throwing away your theater career and no one wants to hear a drag queen talk. Like no one understood what I was doing. But I just, there was no doubt in my mind.
Do you kind of feel the same today? Because you mentioned earlier on in our conversation that the drag scene has basically exploded and there are new drag shows all over the world with RuPaul Drag Race and all of these things. How do you feel about the evolution of drag over the years from when you started? And do you think it's fair to say that drag is considered mainstream now?
I do think drag is mainstream. I have good feelings about that and not good feelings about it. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, I think, well, I've survived for 30 years in a career that people said I would never survive in. So I can't really complain about everything evolves. I'm just lucky to still be a part of it. And the reality is there's only one Coco Peru and
True.
I'm doing what I do, so anytime I get caught up in, oh, I'm not making as much money as that Rue girl, and she's only lip syncing one song, and and my husband will just stop me and go, why did you create Coco? And I go, oh, that's right, to change the world and make it a better place for LGBT youth. And as soon as I realign myself with my values, the other stuff doesn't become so important. And I guess that's kind of what's been my driving force.
I love so much that part where when you had that realization that Coco Peru could be part of this two-spirit identity that you have that really helped you manifest and sort of explore it. It must have been so wonderful to both be having the exhilaration of performing and sort of taking advantage of all of this wonderful education and interest you had going into, the idea of being on stage, but also being able to do it, also fulfilling that other part of you where again, you're not just one gender. I mean, I can only imagine the rush that must have been when you first were starting, when you were really kind of learning this about yourself.
It was great because people back then were female impersonators, and I wasn't impersonating a female. I was performing, presenting female, but talking about being a little boy or, a man. And so part of my vision back then was that I wanted to present as female, yet acknowledge that I'm a man, and sort of confuse people, and then have the audience sort of realize doesn't matter what you identify as. What matters is that I'm relating to everything this person is saying. And I might not look like that person. I might not share that person's sort of sex, whatever, but I relate to everything that person's saying. That was always my goal, was that what I looked like on the outside wasn't really the point of the show. The point of the show was the spoken word.
Yeah, I think for me, you have always been, and this is what I've been different with you compared to other drag queens, is that I see your Coco as an extension of your persona rather than just a drag queen, if you know what I'm saying. You talk about this duality between male and female. For me, you've been different in that sense. It's been easier to relate to you somehow, as both the personal individual that you are and your stage persona, or the essence of Coco, basically.
Yeah, I don't. People always ask me, "What's the difference between Coco and Clinton?" And I go, "Nothing really.
Yeah,
I'm the same person."
Yeah,
I do think I'm more evolved as Coco. I have to say, I think Coco is a bigger version than me. I think, Scott, you were saying earlier, as queer people, we grow up, I say in my show, living outside the box. And that's kind of when you realize that living outside the box is where the magic actually happens, then you kind of accept it and get used to it. And then you're so happy you had that experience of not being totally in the box, but really more outside of it. And so I think for me, the difference between Coco and Clinton is very fine. But as Coco, I'm a little bit more, I think I'm a higher version of myself. I'm more forgiving as Coco. I just feel more enlightened as Coco. If someone is horribly rude to me when I'm dressed as Coco, I sort of let it pass through me. It doesn't, but when they attack me as me, I want to tear their head off. I want revenge.
Oh, God.
How dare you?
Exactly. But I feel like Coco's a little bit more evolved, I have to say.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the feminine. Maybe it's more the feminine side of me that when I'm expressing the feminine side of me. That was the other interesting thing. When I finally, I had always been labeled like this sissy growing up, and was always trying to be more masculine. And as soon as I embraced that girly part of me, I felt more masculine. It naturally balanced itself out.
Interesting. Okay.
It was really, that was one of the most powerful things. What we attribute to masculinity and femininity, it's, who knows, but those things that I think people attribute to each sex sort of balanced out on both sides of me. I felt just more balanced. Yeah. And I learned how to walk with my head up instead of looking down and feeling like I didn't have a place in the world. I just owned it. And I really started to learn how to walk with my head up. Like those little things that people just take for granted was something I had to learn. I had to learn how to hug even again.
Yeah.
Because I was so shut off from my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to just hear you talk about, this journey that happened once you finally explored all that it meant to be you, and all of the aspects that comprise you as who you are. It's so fascinating to listen to. And again, the more we talk about this, I think we help other people, understand that whatever their journey is, it's exciting.
It's very exciting. I love hearing other people's stories. In fact, when I was my husband's bothering me. Could you please leave? I asked you to leave the kitchen and you didn't, and now you just made a noise. Welcome to married life, kids. 25 years.
We're so looking forward to that.
But I was sitting with my mom one day in her condominium down by the pool in Florida. And this woman came over and I started talking to this woman and she finally left. And my mother said, Jesus Christ, I learned more about that woman in 20 minutes than I've learned about her in 20 years living next door to her. And I, my mom was accusing me of being nosy. And I said, no, Mom, people like to talk about themselves. People like to tell their story because everybody has one. And so that's another thing I've always encouraged people is to tell their story. People always say, oh, you have so many stories. And well, if you look at my Coco Thoughts in Solitude, you could pick up anything in your house and there's a story connected to it, And so it's just about taking the mundane things of life and making them fabulous. I don't know. That's just something I grew up around people that were very much like that, very funny, and found the funny in the sort of ridiculous everyday life of what it means to be human, I guess.
Can I just ask you, just when it comes to your relationship with your mother, what has it meant to you to have her support in throughout all of these years?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I don't always see eye to eye with, and my dad has been dead for a while now. He died not long after I created Coco, but he did love me and I had his support and he was very, very proud of me. They came to the Gay Pride Parade. They came to my first show, sat right in front because they were afraid people were going to throw things at me. And they wanted to protect me from things hitting me. So I've always had their support. My dad, when I had my first review in the New York Daily News, this was before the internet, when you relied on reviews to get people in the seats. He went up the streets in the morning where all the guys would get their coffee and roll in the morning. And he passed out the newspaper to all those men and told them to open up to that page. It was like, that's my son, and there I am in full drag. So that was always something I've really celebrated. And, we haven't always seen eye to eye on things, but the core values were there. And they had lost a child. My sister died. I had a sister that died at the age of 15 and I was only 3 months old. And I think losing a child prepared my parents for just accepting me as I am.
It's incredible.
And when I told my mom I was going to do drag, her response was, well, you always had to be different. So they weren't surprised.
I love to hear that your parents were fierce advocates for you with whatever you chose from the very get-go. That's such a great feeling, just to know that you get to explore those pieces of yourself with a little less effort having to sort of justify it, especially to some of the people that you're closest to.
Yeah. I think also I had prepared them because I was doing a lot of this stuff growing up, putting on shows, lip syncing Barbra Streisand around the house. And to their amusement early on, I think they got more concerned as I got older. But I think that they always knew, I think they would have denied that they always knew, but they did. And so when I said I had something to tell my parents, I think my mom actually was worried that I was going to say that I was living with AIDS and was going to die like my sister. So I think when I said I was gay, they were both relieved that it was just that.
Small blessings.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about Casa Coco, how did that idea unfold for you? What motivated you to start this project out during quarantine?
Well, I was approached by one of a guy here in the States that produces my show in Fort Lauderdale and Palm Springs, and he does this series of shows, and I'm one of them. And so he approached me with his producing team to see if I would do something with them. And my first instinct was to say no, because I didn't know how I was going to engage an audience that isn't there. But I thought about it, and I just thought, you have to evolve, Coco, and don't let your fears stop you. Again, it's always about what is the goal. And so I just said, sure, I'll do it. And we gave myself a few weeks to put that first show together. And, it wasn't perfect, but it was what it was. And the response was amazing. And so they've been different. But, getting to read the comments afterwards, people write to me the most beautiful things. I also think getting to see a drag queen interact with someone like, say, Alice and Janney, or where I present someone that the audience doesn't know, like my friend Terry, or they know a puppet from Sesame Street but didn't necessarily know the puppeteer that was behind it, my friend Leslie. I just think for them to see that a drag queen has this rich life with fabulous friends and people is empowering. It's empowering to me. I look at my own life and think, oh my God, I sit around sometimes crying about things. And then I think, I'm so lucky. And I would have never imagined when I created Coco. I mean, I did imagine it, and yet at the same time, you could never imagine where it would take you. But I always encourage young people to be authentic, to be original, don't copy anyone else. And then my big message lately is make sure your goals are bigger than your fears. I speak to so many people that let fears stop them. And I have let fear stop me many a time. But fortunately, a lot of the times I had the right people around me to push me forward, and I had enough boldness to get my own thing going as well.
I love that. Okay, with Casa Coco, do you have any, what's your upcoming show, or what are you excited about that's coming up soon that we, again, can help, hype you up for, and, help other people know is coming up, because it's got to be exciting.
Well, I only do them once a month. And so the next one is pretty soon. I'm not sure you'll have this out before then, but I have an actress that I met on Will and Grace. Her name is Tabitha Brown, but she is a huge internet sensation. And I think she just got her own show. And her story is so inspiring. And she's been labeled by the Today Show here in the States as the mother of America. People just love her, and as do I. And then my other guest is Trixie Mattel, who I met as a very young drag queen who looked at me one day and said, I want to do what you do, and has gone so beyond.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, she is just on a rocket ship for a drag queen, and has created, with her music, with stage shows, a documentary, her makeup line. She's done so much. Now an author. So I like to talk to these people who I know all have fears, all have doubts, and yet somehow manage to create some pretty great things in their life. And that's why I'm always interested in talking to people. Like, how did you become who you are?
Yeah, yeah. I think if there's one lesson from that I'm gonna keep close to my heart that you told us is definitely not to let fear stop you from doing things in life. You only got one chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Matthias, if I might just say, we spoke earlier before we started recording, but I did want to say I was in Stockholm for a comedy show. I was part of a festival. And what amazed me, it was how beautifully everyone spoke English there and could switch like it was nothing.
Yeah.
I was so ashamed showing up only speaking English, but they were, and everybody was so kind. I found I can't remember the name of it, but I still have the can. I found a great store that sold the most amazing tea. And what makes me sad about that, and I performed in the most beautiful old theater. It was a really wonderful experience. And what makes me sad about it was I was working with some people that said, that were part of that comedy thing. And producers were coming to see the shows, that took me to perform at some other big event. And they had decided, this is a show we want to take around Sweden. We need to present this queen. She has a message. And they were so excited. And then the whole world market crashed. And it never came to be. And that is one of my big regrets, that I was so excited that I was going to go on a tour of Sweden, and then it never happened. But at least I got to go to Stockholm.
Yeah, that would have been a really great thing. But I think the whole internet sensation around you and how you evolved with YouTube, that helped someone like me to actually find out about you and appreciate what you do and fall in love with you. And it's been a wonderful journey following your career on YouTube as well. Even though those things might have been more silly than the conversations and more serious aspects of your performances, it's still been absolutely amazing to follow that. It's definitely given me a lot of laughs throughout life. Absolutely.
Well, that's the main goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to thank you so much for joining us, Miss Coco. It has been truly a pleasure, and
absolutely,
I'm sure I'm speaking for both of us that we would love to have you back in the future. And if you would ever take it on and joining as a co-host, we would love that too.
I would totally do that. I'm like, my husband is in awe of my mastery of being a bullshitter. I can talk about anything.
It's an art. It is an art.
It is an art. So absolutely. Would love to chat with you again, co-host, whatever it is. And I do love supporting, especially when I don't have to get dressed up in drag. So I do, because I can't always be in drag. So to be able to do things where it's just audio is wonderful. But I love supporting other people's visions and creations, especially when it's about everything we've talked about.
Yeah, for sure. You're within that sphere
making the world a better place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, if you want to find more information about future episodes and what kind of crazy stuff we're up to, you can find us on Twitter at pop_queer. If you want to interact with me on Twitter, you can find me at Novakaze. Scott is available on Twitter at TheKillCannon. And if you're into gaming, he's also a streamer on Twitch under the alias of KillCannon. Now, Miss Coco Peru, before we wrap everything up, will you please tell us where our listeners can find you on social media and on YouTube?
My website is misscocoperu.com. They can also go to casacoco.live and get a free ticket to the Casa Coco shows. And for those people living in Europe, the shows are repeated, especially for you, so you can watch it at a decent time. And then, of course, I'm on all the other. I'm not on TikTok, but I am on all the other social media as Miss Coco Peru.
All right, that's great. All right, we're saying goodbye for now, and thank you so much, Coco Peru, for being here with us.
I'll be back in Sweden, even if it's just for the tea.
I would love to take you on a date in Sweden. I would love that.
Matthias, you got it.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that.
All right, sweetie. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening, guys.
Bye.